Sophie out here in Singapore, and I'm so excited to have you back with me on the NightOwl podcast. For those of you who don't already know, this podcast is actually created as a way for me to document my journey through entrepreneurship, single motherhood, managing feelings, all of that stuff. And the reason I even started doing this is because I thought that maybe it would be helpful for you to actually take a peek into my innermost thoughts and what inspires me, what actually poses new questions for me to actually consider, and then, of course, how I put any of these things into practice. So, the practical applications of some of these concepts I thought would be really, really interesting to you. So, with that being said, today's episode is actually about the buildup. I don't know if you've actually noticed this before or not, but for the most of us, we make micro decisions all day, every day, and most of them have to do with the idea that I'm going to choose my battles throughout the day. There will be some days where I want to say something to somebody, but I know if I do, that person may or may not take it very well. And rather than go through the drama of dealing with their spin out, their temper tantrum, their reaction to whatever it is that I have to say, I might as well just suck it up, be quiet, and just continue on my merry way. But that also has consequences. So if you notice, I have many, many decisions that I take throughout the day, and I choose my battles throughout the day, which means at the end of the day, if I were to look back, I could probably tell you how many times I bit my tongue versus how many times I stood up for myself or said something or did what I actually wanted to do. People don't tend to realize this. I know for a fact, right, that everybody's out for themselves. They're trying to take care of themselves. They're trying to save their own ass. They're trying to make sure that they get what they need to be able to get through the day. So if everyone has this mindset, right, how is it that me, who should be, taking care of myself instead of taking care of everybody else, how come I end up holding my breath for a lot of people, holding my tongue for a lot of people? And part of that comes down to how I was raised and the belief systems that I thought were very, very important at the time, and some of which have kind of trickled into my adulthood, and some of which I've been able to successfully, and I highlight that, successfully unlearn, because I realize now that they really weren't helpful to me. They were actually detrimental to my own mental health. Part of that is the people-pleasing aspect. Now, as an Asian woman, I was always told to be seen and not heard. I was told to be pleasing, to go along to get along, like all of that stuff. You've all heard it before, right? But that also means that, the nice people finish last. They end up being doormats. They end up being used by everybody else. But what part of that actually comes from the idea that you were told to accommodate as much as possible, let people have their way so they actually feel important and loved and seen and, appreciated by you. So part of that is some of my upbringing. Part of that, yeah, I know better because I also teach this to other people. But the practice of it, the practicality of it, can sometimes seem like a struggle on the back end. So for that, I needed to kind of take a whole episode and break it down for you. There are so many micro decisions, right? From what you eat in the morning, what time you wake up in the morning, what your priorities are as soon as you wake up, who do you need to take care of, who do you need to, get on their way so you can kind of focus energy on yourself. And even then, sometimes their energy, what they need to get done and what you need to be able to do to help them get there, takes so much energy from you that when they leave your presence, you have nothing left except to sit down on the couch and kind of veg for a minute because you feel that depleted. So these are the things that end up eventually, though, building up. And since we're in Valentine's Day at the moment, here in 2022, and although I'm doing all this in retrospect, I wanted to kind of bring that in as well. Valentine's Day for me is about romantic relationships, and those are the relationships that test you the most. These are relationships where you're supposed to be yourself with this person. They're supposed to accept you as you are, push you to be better, catch you when you're slipping, call you out when you're bullshitting yourself, and so basically allow you to be your very best version. But that's not always the intention with which we actually enter into a relationship. Now, if you go back and look at your relationship and really be honest about it, when you first started out, there were probably warning flags along the way. There were probably red flags that said, hey, you know what, this might not be a good fit for you. And even then, you may have fought against those red flags to prove that, yes, you are capable, yes, you are worthy, this is the person you've got your heart set on, and I'm going to do everything I can in my power to make sure I fit into their world so that we make this relationship work. And the highlighted word being, make this relationship work. Any relationship can work, but it takes two people to make it work. And if you're the one pulling all the weight most of the time, what you're going to find out is very quickly how sustainable that effort is and how much of you have to give up in order for this relationship to work. So let's take me. I'm your ultimate case study, right? I've had two really big relationships in my life. One was in college, one was after college, the one that I got married in. Both of them I was engaged to, but I got married to the one after college. But the point being that at the time, the ideal for an Asian woman was you were not successful until you were married. You're not successful until you have a degree. You're not successful until you have a job that pays, a certain amount of money so you can actually afford to be out on your own and not under your parents, right? So, with that being said, when I went out to meet people, my intention was, okay, I'm going to see if I can end up marrying this person. It was not an idea of, let me meet a lot of people, let me get to know a lot of people and figure out what my favorite traits are and who has the closest to, what would be approachable and applicable for my needs to get met. That's not what my intention was. And that was probably where I made the biggest mistake of all. So I went in thinking about, okay, I'm attracted to this person. What am I attracted to them for? And I realized that some of my needs were being met because I didn't naturally have that ability to be social. So they had that social aspect perhaps. Or maybe I lacked the ability to be spontaneous and enjoy life because I had so much structure growing up. And so I looked for people who embodied those traits, and before long, if they were not able to kind of regulate those things and find balance within themselves, I find myself caught up in a whirlwind of either super risk taking or super structured life where I just couldn't get a word in edgewise and there was no room for us to actually go out and have fun, or people who are super independent, because I do appreciate that in a partner, super independent, but they did not have, the emotional availability or space for me to be a part of that as well. So either way, they were on one extreme of the balance beam that is some of these human needs that I continually speak about. And so from then onwards, I started making decisions on, okay, how do I keep this person in my life, instead of making decisions based on, okay, does this person actually help me meet my needs, or do I have to put in an extra amount of effort to be seen by them, which means I got to put my needs to the wayside. So this is where your values and your needs kind of clash a little bit, and that's part of the reason I want to talk about the buildup, because I didn't go into an 8-year relationship. Both of these were about 7 to 8 years long. I didn't go into an 8-year relationship thinking that I was going to break up with them one day. No, I was looking at, okay, well, what can I give up? What can I compromise on? What can I adjust with? And what do I actually really need to survive? Do I need all the things that I'm asking for, or could I manage with less? Because I wanted it to last. Unfortunately, that's not the intention they came into the relationship with. So, of course, I found myself building up and realizing that every time I held my breath, every time I, bit my tongue, every time I didn't do what I wanted to do and said no to myself instead of saying no to the other person, I was becoming bitter. I was becoming resentful. I was reducing myself to such a level. It was like bit by bit. And at the end of it, I was looking at myself and I was like, wow, I've reduced so much of myself that now, first of all, I don't recognize who I am. I don't like who I am. And I don't really like being around you either. So with that being said, the buildup is the part of the journey where you really have to be careful, because suddenly guess what happens? Once you build up, there has to be some kind of a release, and that's usually a breakdown, which I'll cover in another episode. But right now, what I'm realizing is if I don't speak up along the way, I have to also then notice that I chose not to speak up, not that you stopped me. I chose not to continue, nagging or asking for my needs to be met because of the way you reacted to me. And all those things are conditioned behaviors, but there is always, you guys, there's always a choice involved somewhere along that path where you get to say, yes, okay, I will give in this time, or no, I will no longer give in. I don't want this to continue the way that it is. I need it to change now. So, for all of those compromises that I gave up along the way, I realized that the buildup was teaching me that I don't speak up for myself. It's not that I don't have any self-respect. I was taught that a good girl, a good Asian woman, a good wife puts the relationship before her own needs. We are brought up with the martyr syndrome. We're brought up with the idea that we need to actually put others before self in order to show them how important they are to us, how important they are to the relationship itself. Which I'm learning on the back end, yeah, not so much, because at the end of which, when I tell them that I don't want to be with them anymore and this is not working for me, they're going to have a bunch of questions about, oh, well, when did this start? How did this happen? I didn't understand. I didn't know, because I stopped telling them. I stopped giving them the opportunity to choose whether they wanted to come along with me because I set a boundary, or if they wanted to stay right where they were because they were uncomfortable with the boundary and that caused them to change. So if you hear what I'm saying, I'm hoping you tune into the next episode where I kind of talk about the breakdown and what that entails, because suddenly you have to complain about everything. So I love you guys. I hope this helped. Please drop me comments in the section below, and I'll do my best to answer.